Hello, TPR Nation. This is Amber Kuhn from the Perfect RIA. Thank you for joining me on today's Fallout Friday, where I'll be covering the highlights and action items from this week's episodes. On Monday, Matt and Micah were talking about measuring what matters, and they started off by sharing that sometimes it's easy to take your eye off the ball and not really focus on the things you need to be focused on. Now, at the time that this week's recordings are airing, and really this applies anytime, you still have a quarter of the year to go. So it's not time to let your foot off the gas. You want to make one last push to make this your best year ever. Because if you lay off now, you might not notice it right away, but you'll feel that impact next year. This is what the guys say. It's important to do your business planning early. They said the first part of all business planning is knowing where you're at today. They mentioned that they run into a problem with lots of advisors that they start coaching, and they admitted that they've been in this position themselves, where they're asking for numbers and what the advisor shares is inaccurate. It's not that they're being malicious, it's just that it's easy to kid yourself, or the advisor just isn't looking at the right number. So you need to be looking at real numbers, not what you think the real numbers are, because your memory just isn't reliable for that. Matt and Micah said everyone agrees that you need to measure things in your practice. But then the question is, what do you measure? Because not everything is equal. So they wanted to talk about what are the numbers that every advisor should be tracking versus what they're actually looking at. The first number the guys talked about was AUM. They mentioned that they like this number because it's reportable, but it's not reported the same. They specifically mentioned the Forbes list, and they said that it's good as a marketing strategy, but it isn't the number to use to measure the effectiveness and growth of your practice. The next number was time in the office and time out of the office. They said that this is the same as the AUM number because it doesn't really tell the story of what's going on. It doesn't really say that you're working. Another number is number of households. This, again, probably isn't a number that really indicates the value that you're providing or the effectiveness of your office. They said all these numbers are critical to track, but they also tend to be badges of honor. So, AUM, hours in the chair, and households are not the main number to measure. So, what is it? The guy said this is a number that allows you to compare advisor to advisor quickly and combines everything. And that is your effectiveness per hour, which is your hourly rate as an advisor, gross or net. Now, this isn't your billing rate. It's your gross number that you made last year and the amount of time that you were in the office. That number really tells where you're at in your practice. An example is looking at two advisors who have the same revenue, but one is working 70 hours while another's working 30 hours. They said this is superior to AUM because it factors in the real money advisors are charging on, and it factors in everything else and all those other numbers that they mentioned before that don't really tell the story. Matt and Micah said it shouldn't take more than 20 minutes to calculate that number. And they also said it doesn't matter where your projected numbers are. So once you have this number, then you have to make some decisions and focus on business planning. You need to look at what area you're least effective in, and you need to look at what's that thing that's going to make the most impact. From there, you really need to have accountability for this. Now, the guys said that a lot of times people will write out their numbers, especially at masterminds, and then immediately start making excuses for that number. But you need to stop and instead focus on your goals. Another thing that comes up when you're analyzing your practice this way is that it helps to show where you are relative to needing to hire another person. A lot of times advisors try to solve a bad problem by bringing in another person, and that's not the solution. So with this effectiveness number, this is the most important number to track and to be consistent on this. So start tracking that today and then look at what your goals are. And then you can figure out what your hourly rate needs to be, as well as how much you need to make. So this will help you so that you can figure out how to take more time out of the office. This is about how are you getting the maximum revenue per hour while still delivering the highest client value. Now, the guy said you need to be careful with this because they said a lot of times when your numbers aren't good, you make excuses for your own activity or you attack the people whose numbers are better. This is a lie that you're telling yourself that is really just holding yourself back. So you need to create a model that is about delivering more and more value. So no matter where you're at in the effectiveness of your practice, it's about that next step. Let's get into action items. Save the date for our next Nation Power session coming up on October 18th, 9 a.m. Pacific. Visit theperfectria.com/power session to get signed up and save your spot. Visit theperfectria.com/quiz to see where you are in your practice and what is killing your success. On Wednesday, Matt was joined by Yosef Colish, who recruits financial advisors, and joined Matt to talk about how he's able to recruit talent and also how to make sure that your talent isn't being recruited away. Yosef, who's worked with Matt for recruiting in his practice, has been an executive recruiter for 18 years and works exclusively with RIAs. He's shared that he's reaching out to people who are typically currently employed to let them know about an opportunity. He said about 90% are employed and are working for your competition. So he reaches out to people in multiple ways, and he said you've got to break the noise with the right message at the right time on the right day. Yosef said the first thing people think about is culture, and they're curious as to what they aren't being told. He shared how it was so much fun recruiting for Matt's office because people were familiar with him and his delivering massive value, to the point where he had to push people away who he knew just weren't a good fit. But he said you always want to be recruiting and knowing what's out there and have a constant pipeline of people that you'd want to work with. He also said that with RIAs and recruiting, people want to know about what drives you and what's your vision because he wants to build a story for a potential hire. People will want to leave if they aren't sure what the vision is of the firm that they're at, so they need to know where you're going and where your RIA is going. So the advisors who are taking Yosef's calls are the ones who don't see the vision with the practice they're at. He said 66% of the advisors they've placed in the last 2 to 3 years were started by some sort of transition in the firm because it creates questions and concerns about where the firm is going. So if you're going through a transition, you want to unearth those hidden concerns, and that's a way to help poach-proof your organization. Yosef shared a game-changing tip to help any firm create a service advisor role where they're not porting their book of business, and it's not a commission sales role. He said that when connecting with people with that role presented, he's found that about 30% will have some sort of portability. This is putting yourself in the mind of the advisor, so you're leading with the role the person is stepping into instead of that book of business. So this ends up being focused on the cultural fit in the person, and you can go through this at a different angle than other firms. He said to attract those people, they want a culture of mentorship, an ensemble practice, and hyper-level, high service in the way of financial planning. Yosef also talked about the equity component, and he said in the RIA space, if someone is an equity partner, he can almost never recruit them out unless there's some type of transition. So for practices who do have this in place and have a very clear-cut plan for new hires, he said it supercharges recruiting and retention efforts because then everyone feels that they're an owner and that it's their firm. Yosef shared that what people really care about and are looking for is money and equity, even if it's a small percentage, that people want to be owners because it's emotional for them as well. Let's get into action items. For our listeners who want to keep their talent and want to become poach-proof, Yosef is offering a half-hour strategy session. This is a complimentary call, and you can get your offer by texting the word JARVIS, JARVIS, to 646-347-6382. You'll then receive a link to sign up for the session. Yosef is doing a virtual networking session each month to talk about private client influence. You can visit leayosef.com to learn more and sign up. Remember to figure out what your vision is because that will make all the difference. On Thursday, Jamie was talking about something that really makes her mad. And this is when she tells someone specifically what to do and they choose to not do it. And then later it becomes her problem to fix. Now, there are 2 ways that she said this happens. When she's asking a team member to do something and they don't do it, or if she tells a client to not do something and they still do it. In this episode, Jamie wanted to primarily talk about team members. She shared how she uses the DISC tool for behavior analysis, and that stands for driver, influence, steady, and compliance. She uses this when bringing someone onto the firm before they get hired, but this isn't a deal breaker, so someone doesn't get hired or fired based on this, but it is a powerful tool. Another one that she mentioned is Colby. Now, she said that she'll use this with clients as well to understand their communication style and what their driving personality traits are. It allows team members to adapt in how they're communicating with clients. When she remembers which trait is dominant with her team members, it helps her counter hers when she's talking with them about a situation. She'll adapt her leadership style to work better with that personality style. She said that leadership is about motivating and inspiring and aspiring other individuals to be at their absolute best. So she wants an entire culture built on people who want to give their best so that they can deliver massive value to clients. Jamie said that there are some days that she just doesn't want to bend her personality to match others, but the way she handles that is by setting up that expectation and explaining how she's going to be presenting things or sharing things and telling them to not take it personally. So she's not really asking them permission, but she's letting others know what's coming. In addition to the DISC report helping her take personality traits into consideration, it also tells her how her team processes information and how to help them be effective at their job. She said if you're riddled with meeting after meeting with team members, it is because you as a leader are ineffective in your communication. Your team isn't understanding what they need to get done because you as a leader have not articulated it properly. Jamie compared having to follow up with people constantly to being an adult babysitter. And they solve this by creating the perfect week, both for in surge and out of surge. Another way she handles this is by setting deadlines that your team can work with and achieve, and to make sure that it's put down on the calendar. Also, she said make sure that your policy and processes for team members to follow is written down. Something can be crystal clear in your mind, but it can be Greek to a team member. So you need to, after having that verbal conversation, make sure that you're following up with written policies and procedures. You as a leader need to take responsibility for poor communication. Let's get into action items. Look at what is your policy and process for things, and how are you explaining to a team member what you want done and what's being documented for that. Anytime you're delegating something, paint done. So make sure that you are clear on what being done will actually be and look like. That wraps up this week's recap. Thank you for joining me, and please share this or any of our episodes with another advisor or a team member who you think might benefit from listening. And until next time, happy planning.